Greetings and salutations, all my listeners. This is Pamela Tartar, and you're listening to Factor 9 on Pure Momentum Network. Today, my special guest is Marc Stevens. And Marc is an activist, a volunteerist. He is a radio and talk show host for years, and he's an author of 2 books. So, Marc will be joining us in a little bit, and we'll have an enjoyable conversation and discussion with him. Until that time, I'm going to ask David Tartar to join us, and we're going to talk a little bit about current events. David, are you with me?
I am right here.
Well, I'm glad to have you here with me.
So glad to be here.
Oh, well, thank you. It's been a while since we've done any current event shows, hasn't it?
It has been, and I think it was high time that we did one. So here we are.
Here we are. Well, what is in top in front of everybody's reports and thinking today is this Bo Bergdahl show. And I call it a show. It's not a show, but it almost is.
Mm-hmm. It's a distraction.
The distraction, yes. And the stories. And when I say stories, I mean some of them are made up and some of them are true, I guess. But I felt like we needed to kind of get things out there and maybe get them in some kind of order. Now, the first thing we heard was that our dictator-in-chief had exchanged 5 of the top Taliban Al-Qaeda terrorists for this one guy, the last POW, and everybody was so happy. Who wouldn't want someone to come home after that length of time? So it stayed like that for a few minutes. And I do say minutes because gratefully we have the internet. And in just minutes, something can go around the world. And that's exactly what happened. The comrades, the soldiers serving with Bergdahl, came out and said that things were not as it seemed, that he deserted. He left a letter saying that he was denouncing his American citizenship. He was ashamed that he was an American and that things were not the way we were being told.
That's right. And actually, he was quoted as saying, "The horror that is America is disgusting."
I know that has come out a lot.
And he wrote that before he went AWOL, and he went on to say, "I have seen their ideas, and I am ashamed to even be American. The horror of the self-righteous arrogance that they thrive in, it is all revolting." That was Bergdahl's quote.
Yes, and it has also come out that he asked one of his friends if they knew how to ship things back, like some of his personal items. And he actually left his weapons behind and just took some water and a notepad, and I can't think of what else, but it wasn't very many things. But I want to read this small section here.
Okay.
From the Fox News report early on. Many within the intelligence community harbor serious, outstanding concerns, not only that Bergdahl may have been a deserter, but that he may have been an active collaborator with the enemy. Now, this is key to this story, because if he was not an American soldier that was held and not treated very well and whatnot because he was American, to actually being a collaborator with the enemy and actually walking over to the enemy and helping them. That I have heard a story where they actually have video of him showing the Taliban how to do certain things with weapons. So that it definitely is collaboration.
Well, that changes the story a little bit, doesn't it, about this whole saga that we're viewing right now?
Well, it does. And what I have reported for years is that anytime an authority figure program is running, and that is anybody that has been put in the place of authority, which we should never allow to happen, anything they say, you need to look at the opposite. because the opposition, which they are a part of, the opposition is always opposite.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I call them the opposition. They are opposite to life. They are opposite to truth. They are opposite of nature.
And they tell you the opposite of what you should be looking at.
Absolutely. It's a distraction. And I think that this has been proven to be so. Now, do you have a story there from any kind of a law professor or anything, David?
I certainly do. His name's Jonathan Turley. He's a law professor, and what he's basically talking about is, in this particular article, is that he doesn't think that there's much debate regarding whether Obama broke the law with this prisoner swap, and that is that he did break the law with this prisoner swap.
Yeah.
And it goes on to say, and I'm trying to find the actual thing, it says he was interviewed, and the question posed to him was, did the White House violate federal law? And Turley's response was, they did. I don't think that the White House is seriously arguing that they're not violating federal law, and to make matters worse, this is a long series of violations of federal law that the president's been accused of. This is going to add to that pile. I don't think there's much debate that they're in violation of the law. And he explained that President Obama is essentially arguing the very same principle as George Bush, that when it comes to Gitmo, he has almost absolute power, that it's his prerogative, his inherent authority, to be able to make these decisions as he sees fit.
Well, this certainly does fit with my calling this person at the top the dictator-in-chief.
Mm-hmm.
That fits right with it. And that was an interview with law professor Jonathan Turley.
Yep.
Am I right?
Yep, and it was reported by the Daily Mail.
I see.
Mm-hmm.
I see. Okay. So that's another piece of it. Now, I watched a Fox News story following a bunch of links and ending up to a video where they asked Judge Andrew Napolitano what he thought. Was their law broken? And he said, absolutely, without a doubt, because you are not supposed to aid the enemy in any way.
Mm-hmm.
And he named out things like you can't give them a coffee cup, you can't give them a ceramic plate, you
Mm-hmm.
can't give them money, you can't give them secrets, you can't give them people, you can't give them anything.
Right.
Anything you do with the enemy is treason. And look what's happened.
They've given him 5 of their top organizational Taliban fighters.
That's right.
For a deserter.
And at 5 o'clock this morning, I heard on Fox News, I had the radio on, that the head Taliban guy, you can't call him a president or any official because they're not an official. They're a terrorist group. They don't have any authority whatsoever.
They're like a gang.
It's a gang.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And he said, thank you, Mr. President. You have given us equal to more than 10,000 foot soldiers. These 5 men are leaders and organizers, and they equal more than 10,000 foot soldiers.
Right.
Now, that tells you, and I have not seen it anywhere else. I've been on the internet today. I haven't seen it there. I haven't heard it on any other news. This should be everywhere.
Absolutely.
Everywhere. They're thanking him. Why? Because he's done them a huge favor.
Yep, he gave him a huge leg up. And just think what type of message that this conveys to anybody who's thinking about switching over and changing their entire belief system and possibly is swinging towards this sort of a lifestyle as a Taliban.
Well, that's true. And the thing about it is that it puts all American soldiers in danger all over the Middle East.
Sure.
Everyone, because all they've got to do is grab somebody and then negotiate to get a bunch of people out of Gitmo. And this is not an argument about whether Gitmo is right or not. That's not what this argument is.
Right.
This argument is that our dictator has broken several laws here.
Mm-hmm. And one of them is that he's required to provide Congress a 30-day notice before releasing these high-level Taliban prisoners. and he didn't even look at the law. He didn't file that 30-day notice. And we have a Harvard professor, Jeffrey Toobin, who is a liberal, and he's typically on Obama's side. And he's stating that he even broke that law. So you've got guys who are in Obama's corners pointing out that the issue is clearly against the law on this particular situation. And whenever he was interviewed by Wolf Blitzer asked, did the president break the law? And his response was, "Oh, I think he clearly broke the law. The law says 30 days notice. He didn't give a 30 days notice." And it says that he did issue a signing statement, but that signing statement, it's not a law. It's the president's opinion about what the law should mean. And it may be that the law is unconstitutional, a violation of his power as commander-in-chief, but no court has held that. The law is on the books, and he didn't follow it, end quote.
That's true, but the thing that is so silly about this whole thing and scary is that it's just a notification. It's not getting approval. It's not getting a consultation. It's simply a notification. Now, he broke that, but when he signed that some time ago, as he was signing it, he said, well, I may or may not live by this. So, I mean, there's a lot more, like we talk about, anything they say, there's a distraction in there somewhere. And there's a lot more to this than just releasing a guy and giving out five of the top leaders of the enemy. He negotiated, our dictator negotiated with a gang. He did not negotiate with a nation state.
That's right.
He did negotiations with terrorists, which is against our laws. And he did it not even with an elected or a legal state. He did it with a gang.
That's right.
It would be like trying to negotiate with the Bloods and the Crips or something. Who are they? They're no official people. Well, neither are these.
That's insane. I know. And this Harvard law professor with the last name of Toobin, whenever he was asked by Wolf Blitzer if he realizes that he's accusing the president of the United States of breaking the law, his response was, well, I don't think the president is too worried about what I think about this, but I do think his critics have a very good point here. And he even floated the idea of impeachment by saying it matters whether people follow the law or not. So he's not too scared, to say it because it's so blatantly obvious by what's on the books, and our dictator-in-chief just doesn't care.
No, he doesn't. And that's what I've been saying for the last year, maybe more than a year. Everything is coming out and is blatant and is in our faces that they're breaking laws, and they do not care. They do not care. Do you know, and this is off the subject, but I'm going to scoot it in here. Do you know that Congress has actually passed a law that they do not have to live by the law about insider trading? So they sent Martha Stewart to jail for something that wasn't even clearly insider trading. But they have made it that they, amongst them, their little group, they can do insider trading and not get in trouble about it at all.
Unbelievable.
That's how blatant all of this is. Of course they don't care, because somehow they've got the upper hand. And if they don't like what you say, they'll just put you on the list. We do have a list. Now, I wanted to read something that one author wrote and said, war crimes during the occupation became routine. In 2009, the prosecutor for the International Criminal Court was collecting information on possible war crimes by NATO forces and the Taliban. In 2013, the Afghan country's consultative assembly demanded accountability for war crimes committed by the United States in their country, according to Amnesty International. Over the past 12 years in Afghanistan, Amnesty International has repeatedly raised concerns about alleged violation of international humanitarian law. Get this, including unlawful killings and torture. including unlawful killings and torture. So there are lawful killings and there are lawful tortures, but they're looking into the unlawful ones. This
Right.
blows my mind.
Yeah, including, waterboarding and things like that, which they just can't decide whether or not that's...
And Amnesty International continues and says this has been committed by all parties to the conflict. Okay? It's at time that good people of the world take a stand and prosecute the war criminals such as, and get this list, President Obama, George W. Bush, Dick Cheney, Donald Rumsfeld, the top CIA officials, the American generals, the NATO and European leaders who were and are the decision makers and architects of the illegal war and occupation of Afghanistan, where numerous crimes have been committed against the Afghan people during the 13 years. Ultimately, these leaders are responsible for these war crimes. The Afghan people are not responsible for the tragic events of 9/11, which we all know that. Mm-hmm. No evidence has ever been presented linking the Afghan people to the tragic event. There only has been U.S. propaganda. Right. That word. We only used to use propaganda talking about the communist Chinese or the communist Russians, but it's U.S. propaganda. We have more propaganda than all of them put together. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And including propaganda and expert speculation to promote and justify the United States action. Now, that is common. That is what happens. They decide what they want to do, and then they push the buttons of those programs to get the patriotic, good citizens of America to give them support and justification, and to stand up and go be the hands and feet on the ground. These leaders have scapegoated and collectively punished the Afghan people with their illegal war and occupation. Now, that I believe that. Well, I don't have the name of the guy that wrote that article, but something happened with the printer and I didn't get the first page of this. But I did want to mention that what's going on over there in the Middle East is criminal. And it is criminal by the U.S. government that, of course, is a corporation doing business as it is a business, and all wars forever have been banker wars, and this one is no different. And what's different is that this government, this dictator, pushed the program of patriotism and citizenship. And when he pushed that button, the first initial response was, oh, great, that's good. But as the truth starts boiling out, that this was not the way it's been given to us, which is almost always the way it is. Now it's a different story, and we see that our president has committed treason yet again. And there is law to hold him to for this treasonous activity.
That's right. And even Kurt Nemo did an article basically saying that everybody is totally missing the entire boat having to do with this this scandal because of the fact, and he goes on to say that, say, for instance, the Bush era neocons and the warmongering Republicans, you know, they're frothing over this whole Bo Bergdahl prisoner swap, and that numerous tweets are expressing moral outrage over everything from anti-war statements made by Bo while captive to his father's growing a beard, speaking Pashto, and daring to praise Allah from the Rose Garden. And the whole thing is that we're missing the boat, and that is that we're over there on a war which is predicated on lies and illegality, and that the government argued that, you know, Operation Enduring Freedom was in retaliation for the September 11, 2001 attack, despite the fact that nobody claimed responsibility for it, which you just said. And the Taliban at no time and other officials of the government in Afghanistan condemned the attack. They did not claim responsibility and promised to find the culprits. So in a nutshell, what Kurt Nemo is basically stating here is that even though this is a big deal with the president breaking the law and in a lot of different ways going against the laws that are on the books, we're missing the boat. And the boat is that we shouldn't have been over in Afghanistan to begin with. And this is basically probably just another distraction and another opportunity to validate something that shouldn't be.
Right. Well, the thing is, all wars are bankers' wars. This has something to do with money that we're not sure about. It could be them taking over the resources of Afghanistan, which probably is true because most of our soldiers, foot soldiers, are on the ground guarding poppy fields.
Mm-hmm.
And I read something the other day that says never has the crop been as great as it is right now.
Isn't that something?
So that's probably one of the facets that it has to do with. But definitely, we have been lied to yet again. And it's time for us to wake up and say, no more. We're not buying these lies anymore.
Right.
And if all of us stop going to war, there won't be any.
Yeah.
Because these elite families will not go themselves. And if their children happen to sign up, they're protected all the way. They're not actually in it. So we can stop this. We have the power.
That's right.
Now,
and after somebody lies to you so many times, psychologists will tell you that you just absolutely lose your ability to trust that person. And that's what is happening again and again and again and again and again. And the more information that comes from around the world in minutes after these things happen, all of us having a little bit different piece of the puzzle, putting it together, all of a sudden this lie becomes very, very visible, and it's no longer an elusive little story.
That's right. It's extremely obvious. And, I talk to people all over Europe. I talk to people in Australia, and I have been told that people in China feel the same way about Americans, that we are just ignorant. We are lied to all the time, and we just act like we don't know it.
We eat
act
it
like
up.
we don't see it. It's because we're so programmed.
Mm-hmm.
And this has been done incrementally and on purpose. Well, I need to close out this time, David. I really appreciate you being with me during this time.
It was my pleasure.
Marc Stevens is coming on, my special guest today,
mm-hmm.
and we're going to have a good visit with him, and then maybe we'll come back and finish the current events talk after he leaves.
Sounds good.
That sounds good. Okay, thank you very much. Now, you have been listening to Pamela Tartar on Factor 9, Pure Momentum Network. And please do join us after this break. And Marc Stevens, our special guest today, will be with us, and he will present his information and some of his stories and his 2 books that he's written. So come back right after these messages.
I want to come back as a virus and kill most of the population.
Prince Philip.
Indeed. Yes.
Welcome, everyone. I'm Deborah Taveras of StopTheCrime.net, and I welcome you to Stop the Crime on the Pure Momentum Network. I am committed to exposing the ongoing war being waged not only against all American people, but the entire global population by international central banking cabals and their minions. We will be talking to you about the silent weaponized systems of assaults upon the population, which will help to define what everybody knows: something is terribly wrong. The corporate banking system has created the illusion that we have a legitimate government, and we do not. This corporate structure has gradually taken control of our country's economy, legal system, intelligence, military, scientific, and political operations. Only by understanding your reality will you be able to engage in solutions, and there are solutions. And we must engage. We must help others. We must live in right conduct and not be afraid. Visit us on the Pure Momentum Network and StopTheCrime.net.
The momentum is building.
Welcome back, listeners. This is Pamela Tartar, and you're listening to Factor 9 on Pure Momentum Network. My very special guest today is Marc Stevens. Marc is an author, a radio show host, a consultant, and a voluntarist, and he's going to tell us what that is. Marc's website is marcstevens.net, and you need to spell Marc with a C, M-A-R-C as in Charlie, and Stevens with a V, S-T-E-V as in Victor, E-N-S.net. Now, Marc has written 2 books. The first one was Adventures in Legal Land, and Government Indicted is the second one, and they're both very exciting. You're going to enjoy those books. Marc's radio talk show hosting began in 2005, and currently he is broadcasting on the Liberty Radio Network. His show is on Saturday from 4 to 7 p.m. Eastern Time, and on his website that I just gave you, marcstevens.net, on the right-hand side under upcoming events is a link, and you can listen to him live on Saturday, 4 to 7 Eastern Time. Marc, thank you so much for sharing your time with us today and for being on Factor 9 on Pure Momentum Network. Marc Stevens, hello.
Well, hello, and thanks for the opportunity. I appreciate it.
Well, we're so happy to have you here. And when I was researching your information, it does coincide with a lot of what I talk about, especially I love the psychopathy part, that if you believe in government, you're worshiping psychopaths. And I absolutely love that little saying, because it's absolutely true.
That's my experience, and by psychopath, of course, I'm sure you've spoken about this many times also. I don't mean it as an insult. Well, it can't be taken any other way, but that I'm just using that one word to describe the behavior, the antisocial behavior, the constant lying, the massive ego, the callous disregard for other people. And I deal with these people every day, and very, very few of them would I characterize as exhibiting antisocial or psychopathic behavior.
Right. Well, I talk about them in that it is everything that's going on in our systems today is inhumane, meaning outside of being human. And so that's why I call them psychopaths. But I really enjoyed that you had that stuck in there in your work. So could you begin by telling us a little bit about how you began your career in activism?
Well, I started helping some friends out here in Phoenix, just because I had a lot of disdain for the legal system and legal profession. I'm not going to bore anyone with the details. I have a video called Delusions that goes through a lot more of how I got here. But I was helping people with traffic stuff, and it just, we were having a lot of success. And I was going into courts locally here in Phoenix, and we were having a lot of things tossed out, and I had 9 of my own at the same time, pretty much almost, overlapping. So I was in a couple of years constantly in court, and learning what worked. Well, I should say what was effective and what wasn't, and really understanding the the system. That they're just people, like we were just talking about, and when you start engaging these people, the lying, the dishonesty, and the cruelty is apparent to anybody who's ever gone to court. You can see that in almost every single judge, pretty much every prosecutor. And I always looked at it as damage control to limit the amount of damage, because these people are predators and they aim to hurt you, and sometimes, very badly. Yeah. And so I started taking what was effective, what wasn't, and stripping it away. And I just really, not that I'm the originator of the Socratic method, but it just came down to asking questions. And as I went along asking these questions and putting the burden on the prosecution where it belonged, you start to realize there are certain questions that they like to spin the answers and get you off point. So little by little, you start whittling things down. to where you can just ask 2 or 3 questions and really completely undo or undermine the prosecution's facade of a case. And
Right.
so that's why you can ask 2 or 3 questions, and you can completely undermine any bureaucratic attack. It doesn't mean it's going to stop, but you're going to be able to show, and most of the time get them to admit that they don't have evidence. They'll even say to you, I have on my website, markstevens.net, of course, there are examples of bureaucrats actually saying we don't need evidence.
I read that. I read it. Yeah, I really enjoyed your website, and our listeners will as well. Okay, so you began having success on your own and helping other people have success against tickets and other things at court. Is that how it happened, or was it just tickets?
Well, it started with just tickets. And what I started to notice, even before I realized that there were no states, there were no citizens, there were just people. It's all demonstrably false because, of course, it's pay or go to jail. And I started to I lost my track.
That's
I'm
okay.
sorry.
That's
It's
all
been
right,
one of those
Mark.
mornings.
I
Just
know.
re-ask me the question.
Well, it was about. Was it just tickets, or did you move
Right.
on to other things?
I started to realize that one of the things I was using in the traffic stuff was that it was all taxes anyway, and so I just started applying what I had learned by engaging the predators, these people called government. I started applying them to IRS situations and tax situations because it all comes down. All traffic offenses are all the driver's license, the vehicle license tax. It's all taxes. It's just a different name of tax.
Right.
It's an excise tax or a privilege tax. So that's when I started working with the IRS, and so the main work that I do is IRS, tax stuff and traffic. But I've also been helping many people, and we've had a lot of success with other non-violent offenses such as possession and things like that.
Mm-hmm. Now, Mark, did I see in your store tab on your website that you have some things that will help people do this?
Yes, I have a script which is not meant to just read line by line. It's meant to be role played with, and we have a Skype chat with about 230-something people that are able to participate on 3 continents to help people role play with the script so that they are able to prep and go in and be effective in court and be able to hold your own. Because it really is just the whole model really comes down to this: whether we're in court or whatever attack it happens to be, someone is making an accusation. Someone has an argument that you're a bad guy, or their argument is that they have jurisdiction and you did something bad, you didn't comply. And all I suggest is, and all I do is just to ask for the evidence those arguments are based on. And even though that's very, very simple, it's very intimidating going in, and they start yelling. They have all their psychological techniques that they use to gaslight you and whatnot. And so the role playing really helps keep you on point, and so that you also learn how to make effective objections, and you can recognize the litany of logical fallacies that are going to be thrown at you when you do engage them.
So that gives people something to work with, so they're familiar with what some of the comebacks could be, so they won't be stuck out there and like blindsided.
Right. Some people have called my show. They've emailed me and said, "Look, I just don't know how to respond to the 700 different things they could say to me. I can't do like you do." And I said, "Well, that's not what I do. I have I recognize the tactic that they're using, and so." It boils down to a handful of logical fallacies and objections that you need to make. Like just this morning, I asked, and I always get a positive response. So they always confirm this. On my website, I got lots of examples of this, like with the police chief here in Scottsdale. And look, we all know that the basic argument that these people called government, regardless of the physical location, it's absolutely worldwide, that if you are physically in Scottsdale or you're physically in Toronto, then the laws of Canada or the United States apply to you. And they all agree to that. And yet, now when someone knows what I'm doing and they're sort of familiar, they throw up a roadblock, and then you start getting the logical fallacies, the garbage. So just this morning, someone at the Attorney General's office in Idaho, he wouldn't answer the question that if I'm physically in Idaho, then the laws apply to me. He says, I am ethically bound not to give you legal advice. I'm thinking, who in the world are you talking about? So that's called a straw man. That's not I didn't even ask that. I'm not even asking for legal advice.
Right.
And that is just a typical dodge. Judges will say that to you in person. Will say, if you ask for what evidence has the prosecution given to prove jurisdiction, sit a little peon citizen there, my piece of chattel, that's cute. I can't give you legal advice. No one's asking for legal advice. And so it's learning that almost every single time that they respond to you, it's going to be a lie. And it's going to take the form of some kind of logical fallacy. And it's a matter of just objecting and getting right back on point and correcting them.
Because they're distracting you. They're trying to throw you off balance and distract you from where you were going.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. And it's done on purpose, Mark.
Oh, yeah. There's no doubt. I tell people do never, ever underestimate how slick these people are. They are professional litigators. I'm talking about, when you're dealing in court. You're dealing with someone whose job is to argue and is to distract and is to keep the truth from coming in. We have the exact opposite. We want the truth to come out. So we're doing everything and making objections, know what we can, and asking the right questions to bring the facts, bring the truth out. And the prosecutor's job is to do a 180 degree, the opposite of that. And they're very, very good at it, some of them. Well, some of them anyway.
Right. Well, I think most of them are. And, one of the things is that I talk about is that we deal with these systems as if they were like we are. And they're not. They do not respond to you in a human way. They are not like we are. We are naturally compassionate and empathetic, and we're not natural predators. They are all of those things. They are there to get you your money and to get you put in jail. That is their job. That is what they're after. And when we don't realize that, we're just very vulnerable and very easy prey.
Yeah, I tell people when I do consults, when we're on the radio show, anybody who's going into court or anyone dealing with the IRS or any kind of so-called government, because there is no government, it's just people, psychopaths, like we're saying, you have to go in with the mindset that every single thing they say is a lie. So you should object, ask for a clarification, and ask for the evidence that whatever they just said, whatever argument they just put forth, just ask for the evidence that it's based on. I have on a recent one from the IRS. All I did, Pamela, was ask a very simple, straightforward question. And again, it's not edited. It's all on the website. The only thing I did edit out some of my client's personal information. I asked her, and this is in collections, by the way, so for the critics, please, can you confirm that there's evidence proving jurisdiction over my client? And she said, after a pause, I prefer not to answer that question. Now,
you can't get away with that, though, and I can't get away with that.
Well, no, and the thing that gets me is I can be labeled a conspiracy theory nut job wacko, that I'm some kind of sovereign citizen, which I'm an anarchist or a voluntarist, which doesn't make any sense to call me a citizen of anything. And the label, all because I'm asking a simple question, and the ones who are actually applying the law, claiming jurisdiction, the ones who can support their argument, they're the good guys.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what, do you Stockholm Syndrome much? I mean, really? Really? Right. They're the ones who have not one single fact to prove their laws apply to me or anyone else. And I'm the one who is a nutcase and delusional.
Right. Because in a world where everybody is blind, the one-eyed man is king.
Yeah.
So you know what I mean? But if we were all sighted, the one-eyed guy would be, an oddity at the very least. But it is my opinion that enough people are waking up now that the systems are even getting more predatory and even more, they're trying to pull their little games on all of us now, where it used to be just a few people. They're really going after the whole population, in my opinion.
Well, I agree that they have definitely expanded the scope of their attacks, because now you're hearing where They're just it was in Florida, and there were a couple of people where every Wednesday they would feed the homeless at a park. It would be like a picnic, and they're facing thousands in fines and jail time if they if they continue doing it. So it's like, and then we hear I write about in the book because it's such a blatant example where they're attacking the Amish.
I know about this, Mark. Oh, it's horrible.
Yeah, so you're right. The scope of their attacks, and this is what I was talking about yesterday for my own show. I'm recording my show for this weekend, where there's so much of this going on, and not only do you have them increasing the scope where children are being put in handcuffs.
I know.
A 9-year-old girl recently. Children, but now there's such an epidemic of police shooting animals. It's almost taken for granted now. If you call 911 for whatever reason, they're going to shoot your dog.
I know. Well, I'm 61 years old, so I'm older than you are, and I remember when police officers really were to serve the people, and they really cared about us, and they liked us and our dogs. But now you've got these people who are not human at all. When I say they're not human, they have given up their human nature. They aren't kind and they aren't gentle. They are not compassionate. They're not empathetic. They are predators. They're out to get us. We are the enemy.
There is a school of thought that shares that they are not actually of the same species. I have a problem with that because biologically, when you break them open, which is really the only defense you have against, well, it's one of the two defenses you have against the psychopath. You either kill them when they're attacking you, I'm talking about defensive force only, or you ostracize them. But if they're going to continue attacking you, that's the only currency that they understand. That's the only one they accept.
That's right. Well, the difference, Mark, is in their brain. You're never going to see it. It is in their brain. I have all the studies on psychopaths. And literally, the psychopath, when they are experiencing you having pain, their pleasure centers light up.
Yes. Well, that's something you can see. You can see that there's differences in the brain function. I agree with you there. There is definitely some circuits that are turned off. So whether it was childhood trauma, or I agree. You can scientifically prove the difference between the psychopath's brain and a normal person.
Right.
It's just they still have the same number of chromosomes, and they're
That's
still.
True.
So I believe they're part of obviously they're human, they're part of the species, but I agree with you in that they are lacking the fundamental qualities that separate because I think then again, animals have empathy too, but animals aren't. They're only predators as far as to feed themselves.
Right.
I do believe that they lack that. I agree. They lack that the empathy and the ability to feel other people's pain, and they do get a pleasure out of not only other people's pain. This is what's really so sick about this. They actually enjoy lying.
Yes, they do. Even when it's easier for them to tell the truth and less problematic, they will still lie.
Yeah, they get a dopamine hit. Right. They're junkies, and so and knowing that they're actually getting a hit from from hurting other people. You'll never hear me say especially on someone I'm working on behalf of. So if later when I'm talking about to the IRS with somebody, I will never come out and say how much I used to do this, but you don't say anymore that you're hurting this family.
Right.
Because you're going to make it worse.
Oh, absolutely. And the studies that have been done on psychopaths tell us that to get them in the system makes them worse because then they learn how it works. And if their goal is to hurt that family, and you tell them, oh, my God, you don't know what you're doing. You're putting them through hell. Well, that feeds them. So they're going to do it even more because that is what they're after. That is their goal. They are truly predators.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, we're on the same page about that. Now, Mark, I wanted you to explain the word voluntarism because some of our listeners may not be familiar with that term.
Sure, I'm happy to. Voluntarism is just the same as anarchy or agorism, agorism is the tactic based on voluntarism, that all human interaction should be voluntary or not at all. And that it's based on the non-aggression principle, which until libertarianism was hijacked, meant that it is what we learned by the time we're 4 or 5 years old. It is wrong to initiate force or threats of force to against people. That initiatory force is always wrong. Defensive force is always morally justified.
Yes.
And so because when you say, I'm an anarchist, they immediately think, oh, you want to overthrow the government by force. That's not true. Anarchy or an anarchist is just the rejection of the concept of a ruler, that there are no rules. There's a rule. There are rules. Yes, it's called the non-aggression principle or voluntarism, where all human interaction should be voluntary. And no, you can't force me to pay for your services because you call yourself a government, because I will kill you in defense of my life. And that's why when some people are like, well, we can't end government, what we know is government tomorrow, because another government will just come in its place. Yes, that's true. However, once the concept of government is destroyed, they don't have a perception of legitimacy. So when that cop tries to take control over my life, liberty, and property, I am, and the majority of people will see the cop as the criminal that he is. And so if I have to use deadly defensive force, I will be seen as the good guy, as I, instead of people just looking, oh, he had a badge, I should have just submitted to him and let him kill me and then have my family bring a wrongful death suit. So that's what voluntarism is.
Good. Well, I'm glad you explained that, because that is what we need to be. That's what we need to recognize. That we need to recognize that if our quote unquote government, which it is not a government, and you and I know that, but if our government was good in any way, they would not be so predatory, and they wouldn't have to force us into anything. If it was good, we would volunteer for it, and then it would be a completely different system. It
would just be a completely decentralized businesses, people providing protection of life, liberty, and property on a voluntary basis, and there would be competition, there'd be responsibility, and there wouldn't be a double standard. I mean, people say there's no double standard. There's no caste system in the United States. Are you anybody who says that? Are you out of your mind? Judges have absolute immunity. Prosecutors have immunity. Most government agents have qualified immunity. So if you think there is no double standard and a caste system in this part of North America, you need to wake up, and you have to look and remember that they gave the immunity to themselves.
That's right.
And the only real problem with what we call government is the compulsory pay or go to jail basis. And that when I tell people that I'm a voluntarist or I'm an anarchist and that all government as we know it should be completely abolished, they think it's crazy. I said, look, the only thing we want to change is the manner in which it's paid for. Every single problem you associate with government, all of them come down to that one thing, and that's the coercive nature of it. Take that away, and all of that crumbles. All of it.
That's right. You're absolutely right, Mark. I'm right with you there. And I see in the people I interact with, I see that people are waking up a bit to some part of it, not all of it. But if they can just grab one part and truly see it, then the other parts will come to light. Because we've been so programmed to believe in all these systems. And, the word belief has a lie right in the middle of it. L-I-E, right in the middle of it. So everything you believe, the government, the education system, the medical system, the legal system, all these systems that we believe in because we're programmed to believe in, if we stopped believing this minute, we would see them for the lies that they are. And they are all lies. And the people that are coerced, and they are coerced, I believe that and I'm not saying believe, I know that they are traumatized into being what they are. What do you think the medical internship is about? It is traumatization. We have interns that are supposed to be treating sick people who haven't slept for 120 hours. They haven't had a shower in a week. They haven't had any privacy in 2 weeks, and they are delusional practically. And they do things that are mistakes and that are wrong. And now they're in the system. They're in. They've done it. They can't get out now because the system's going to protect them. And so I say that all of these systems, the human beings that look like you and me that are running them, because machines can't run them and corporations can't run them, people have to run them. They are in some way traumatized and programmed to do what they're doing against their own human nature.
It's the same thing with law students. And,
yes.
and I don't put them. I'm just saying, as far as the same kind of process. Obviously, the skills you do learn to become an MD are far, in a way, more valuable than anything you learn in law school. Law school but it's anytime you have a system that's based on coercion, like the whole entire school system, it's all based on coercion. Yeah, but when you can homeschool with permission, you pull your kids out and just take care of your children on your own, and you'll have a SWAT team take your children away. So the medical, whatever it happens to be, the entire education, if you can call it that, is all coercive. It's supported by threat, duress, and coercion.
Right.
And what's appalling, and this is where you get to the whole, when you're dealing with a sociopath or a psychopath, is when they actually lie right to your face that there's no one's forced to pay taxes.
Right.
So you're telling me when you threaten that it's a felony, you'll put me in jail. That's not threat, duress, and coercion. I had Suzanne Small from the Franchise Tax Board. She's the head of the legal department there in Sacramento. Tell me, this is a direct quote. It is not threat, duress, and coercion when the government does it.
Oh, my word. Oh, my goodness. Oh, my goodness, Mark. That is just horrible. Well, this is very interesting, and I'm so happy to have you for our listeners to hear what you have to say and to go to your website and take advantage of your information. We are going into the members section now, and I would invite everyone to become a member of Pure Momentum Network. We have wonderful hosts and shows that will give you information to come up against this psychopathic system. And it is, I say, one system because it's all connected and it's all the same thing. No matter which system you get in, it's all based on coercion and lies. So please do become a member and join us in the members section. Mark and I will be continuing there.
We invite all our listeners to join us in the members section for the second hour of all our shows. We encourage you to click on the subscribe button, choose a membership type, pay with PayPal, and voila, you're a member. Enjoy all Pure Momentum Network material, the second hour of all talk shows, extra interviews, and all archives.